The office was always loud on Mondays. Phones rang, printers whirred, keyboards clicked like an orchestra of deadlines. But in the middle of it all sat a calm center, a young Russian woman named Alina. She was the kind of person who could quiet a storm just by smiling. When someone forgot their lunch, she'd offer half of hers. When a colleague was stressed, she'd make tea without being asked. Nobody told her to. It was simply who she was. Her coworkers adored her, though they didn't quite understand her. Russians, they often joked, were known for their strength, for straight talk, resilience, and stoic faces in bitter winters. But Alina was different. She was soft, thoughtful, patient, too kind for Moscow, some would tease. But they said it with affection. "Alina, you're not like most of us," her friend Irina once said, sipping coffee at the office pantry. "You actually listen when people talk. It's weird." "Good weird," Alina just laughed. "Maybe I got it from my grandmother," she said. That line always made people curious. Because anyone who had ever known Alina's grandmother, or even heard about her, knew she was no ordinary woman. Her grandmother, Lilia, was a legend in their family. A woman who had lived through war and peace, who spoke in gentle tones but carried stories that could break your heart. She had spent her younger years somewhere far away, in a place Alina had never seen, the Philippines. It was there, Lilia said, that she learned what it meant to be truly kind. During the war in the 1950s, Lilia had been among the Russian refugees who were scattered across Asia, searching for safety. Some ended up in China, others in Europe. But fate took her to the Philippines, a small island in Samar where locals took her in like family. She told stories of palm trees, children laughing barefoot in the rain, women who cooked rice over fire, and neighbors who shared what little they had with open hearts. "The Filipinos taught me that you don't need much to be rich," Lilia would tell her granddaughter when she was little. "Just kindness, just laughter. That's enough." And so Alina grew up with that spirit, not hardened by the cold, but softened by the warmth of stories she never lived, yet somehow carried in her soul. Every Sunday, when other kids were watching cartoons, Alina would sit in the kitchen watching her grandmother cook. The air would fill with smells she couldn't name, sour, salty, comforting. Lilia would hum a tune from her youth and stir a pot of sinigang, a Filipino soup that tasted like sunshine after rain. Sinigang. That was the word she learned before she could spell her own name. It became their ritual. Every time Alina was sad, her grandmother would cook it. "This," she'd say, handing her the steaming bowl, "is what love tastes like." But years passed, as they always do. Lilia grew older, her hands frail, her voice softer. When she passed away, it was like the light in their kitchen dimmed forever. The smell of sinigang faded from their home, replaced by the scent of dust and silence. Yet Alina carried her grandmother's warmth everywhere she went. Even as life in Moscow hardened others, she stayed gentle. Her empathy made her stand out, and sometimes it made her feel out of place. Every Friday evening, when the city's lights flickered on and traffic filled the streets, Alina would drive for hours just to reach a small Filipino restaurant on the edge of Moscow. It wasn't fancy, just a tiny spot tucked between a laundromat and an old bookstore. But to her, it was sacred ground. The restaurant was called Casa Manila. It was run by a middle-aged Filipina named Marisa, who had lived in Russia for more than a decade. She recognized Alina after her third visit. "Ah, you again," she'd say with a smile. "You must really like sinigang." Alina would grin shyly. "It reminds me of someone I love." Marisa never pried. But over the months, they became close, like aunt and niece. They'd talk about life, family, and the strange comfort of soup on cold nights. Marisa had that same warmth Alina remembered from her grandmother's stories. The kind of warmth that didn't just sit in a room, but filled it. One snowy evening, Alina walked in, shaking the frost off her coat. Marisa greeted her with the usual cheer, but something in her eyes seemed heavy. "Is everything okay?" Alina asked. Marisa sighed. "I'm afraid not, dear. Casa Manila might be closing soon. Business is slow. Rent is high. It's hard to keep it running." The words hit Alina like ice. "Closing, but you can't. This place, it's special." "I know," Marisa said softly, stirring a pot behind the counter. "It's special to me too. But sometimes love isn't enough to pay the bills." They sat together that night, long after the last customer left. Snow fell quietly outside as Marisa talked about her life in the Philippines. about her children back in Iloilo, the laughter in her hometown, the way the air smelled of mango and sea. "You know," Marissa said, "you remind me of the people back home. Always kind, always helping others. You're Russian, yes, but your heart, it feels Filipino." Alina laughed through the lump in her throat. "My grandmother would say the same thing. She lived in the Philippines during the war. She said the people there saved her life." Marissa's eyes widened. Maybe that's why. You carry it. That light. They shared sinigang that night, sour and warm like memory and comfort in one bowl. And as they talked, an idea began to take shape in Marissa's mind. "You should visit," she said suddenly. "Visit?" "Yes, the Philippines. You always talk about your grandmother, about how much her time there shaped her. Maybe it's time you see it for yourself." Alina froze for a moment. I've never even thought about that." "Then maybe now's the time," Marissa said gently. "Sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory is to walk the paths they loved." The words lingered long after Alina left that night. She drove home in silence, snow swirling around the headlights, thinking about her grandmother's old stories, about Samar, about laughter, about the kindness that felt like sunlight. Could she really go there? The thought both scared and excited her. She had never traveled that far, never been to Asia, but something inside her stirred, a whisper of destiny. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Alina couldn't shake the idea. At work, while her colleagues argued over reports, she found herself daydreaming about beaches, about palm trees, about a place her grandmother once called home. One morning, after a long meeting, Irina nudged her. "You've been somewhere else lately. What's going on?" Alina smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm thinking of a vacation. Anywhere nice?" "The Philippines," she said quietly. Irina blinked. "The Philippines? That's random. Maybe not," Alina replied. "Maybe it's where I was meant to go." That night, she opened her grandmother's old photo album. The pages were yellowed, the corners frayed. Between faded black and white photos of Lilia as a young woman, there were tiny handwritten notes, in Russian and broken English. One read, "Samar, 1953, the kindest people I've ever met." She ran her fingers over the ink, trembling. And then she booked her ticket. When the plane touched down in Manila weeks later, the first thing Alina noticed wasn't the heat, it was the sound. The laughter, the music, the chatter of strangers talking as if they were family. It was overwhelming, yet oddly familiar, like walking into one of her grandmother's stories. She spent the first few days in Manila exploring markets, tasting street food, watching jeepneys painted like rainbows. Everywhere she went, people smiled. Taxi drivers made small talk. Vendors called her ma'am. Children waved at her from doorsteps. It felt safe. It felt warm. Then she flew to Samar, the island where her grandmother had once lived. She didn't know what she was looking for exactly. Maybe just a trace of the past. On her third evening there, she found a small eatery by the sea. A wooden shack painted blue and white with a handwritten sign that read, "Sinigang sa Bayanihan, home-style Filipino soup." She sat down, ordered a bowl, and waited. When it arrived, the smell hit her. Sour tamarind, fish broth, tomato, and green chili. Her heart skipped. She took one spoonful and froze. The taste, the warmth. It was her grandmother's kitchen all over again, her eyes blurred with tears. She whispered, "Babushka," and smiled through her crying. The old woman who owned the eatery noticed. "Ah, first time trying sinigang?" Alina nodded, wiping her eyes. "No, it's the first time I've found home." They talked for hours that night, about family, about kindness, about how food carries memories. The woman taught her how to cook sinigang the traditional way, laughing when Alina couldn't stop tearing up from the sourness. When she returned to her hotel that night, the moon reflected on the waves like a blessing. She understood now. She understood why her grandmother loved this place. It wasn't just the beauty, it was the heart. And as the sea wind brushed against her face, she whispered to herself, I finally found her again." The Moscow skyline shimmered in the distance as Alina's plane descended through the thick winter clouds. It had been 2 weeks since she'd left the Philippines, yet her heart still beat in the rhythm of the islands, slow, warm, and full of music. Her camera roll was overflowing with photos. Sunsets over Siargao, children playing on the beaches of Cebu, and that one unforgettable bowl of sinigang on a wooden table beside the sea. Her trip had changed her. The kindness she saw everywhere, in strangers, waiters, drivers, even street vendors, was something she had only heard about from her grandmother's stories. But to experience it firsthand was like walking inside a memory. As she exited the terminal, the cold Moscow air bit into her cheeks, pulling her back to reality. The city was still gray and silent, everyone wrapped in heavy coats and expressions of fatigue. But for the first time, Alina didn't see that as normal. She saw it as missing something. Warmth, color, heart. When she finally reached her apartment, she unpacked the small bottle of calamansi extract she had bought from a market in Manila and placed it on her kitchen shelf like a relic. Just in case, she whispered, smiling. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment she had that sinigang on the island, the exact taste that brought her grandmother back to life for a moment in her mind. The tenderness of the meat, the sourness that bit through the heart, the way the hot soup comforted her as the waves crashed behind her. It was her childhood. Her love, her loss, and her healing, all in one bowl. The next morning, she decided she couldn't wait another day. She called Casa Manila. Hello? Came the familiar voice of the restaurant owner, Rosa, on the other end. Rosa, it's Alina, she said, breathless. There was a pause, then an excited gasp. Oh my goodness, my favorite customer. You're back! How was the Philippines? Alina's eyes filled with tears. It was more than I ever imagined. Rosa, you were right. I understand now. My grandmother, and I understand her now, Rosa chuckled warmly. Ah, I told you. Once you visit, the Philippines doesn't leave your heart. They met that weekend at the restaurant. It was quiet as always. A few regulars sat in the corners, and the smell of garlic and tamarind hung softly in the air. But to Alina, it didn't smell lonely anymore. It smelled like home. When Rosa brought out her usual order, sinigang na baboy with a side of rice, Alina smiled through her tears. It's the same, she whispered. Exactly the same, Rosa smiled sadly. But maybe not for long. We're still planning to close next month. Business has been slow and rent keeps climbing. Alina shook her head. No, you can't close this place. This is not just a restaurant, this is my grandmother's memory. It's everything, Rosa sighed. I know, anak. But I can't pay the bills with memories. Alina leaned forward, determination sparking in her eyes. Then let's make new ones. Let's make people see what this place is and what it stands for. Rosa raised an eyebrow. You mean marketing? Alina grinned. Something like that. But not just marketing. Storytelling. That night, Alina stayed in the restaurant after closing time. She took pictures of every detail, the wooden furniture, the little carved jeepney by the counter, the framed photo of the Manila skyline on the wall. She wanted to show the world what this place meant. By Monday, she was back at her office, her usual calm replaced with energy that her coworkers immediately noticed. Alina, you're glowing, her teammate Sergey teased. Vacation in the tropics must have been educational, she laughed. It was life-changing, actually. You wouldn't believe what I found there. Her colleagues gathered around as she showed them pictures of her trip, the beaches, the food, the laughter of the people she met. They leaned in closer, fascinated. Wait, said Yelena, one of the interns, pointing to a picture. Is that soup? It looks delicious. That's sinigang, Alina said proudly. It's a Filipino dish. Sour, comforting, like warmth in a bowl. It reminds me of home, even though it's not Russian at all. Where can we try it? Another coworker asked, and just like that, an idea took root. Actually, Alina said, smiling, there's a Filipino restaurant here in Moscow, a hidden gem called Casa Manila. That Friday, Alina brought a group of her co-workers to Casa Manila. The restaurant had never seen so many young professionals crowd into it at once. They laughed, took selfies, ordered everything on the menu, adobo, lumpia, pancit, and of course, sinigang. When Rosa brought out the dishes, her face lit up with surprise and joy. Alina, who are all these people? Friends, Alina said. New fans of the Philippines. The night turned into an impromptu cultural exchange. They played OPM music from Alina's playlist, Ben and Ben, Moira de la Torre and River Maya, and everyone sang along, even if they didn't know the words. Filipino food is amazing, Sergey said between mouthfuls. Why don't we have more of this here? Rosa wiped her hands on her apron, laughing. Because not many know how much love goes into it. Every Filipino dish has a story. Alina looked around at her friends, laughing, smiling, talking to Rosa, learning words like salamat and masarap. Her heart swelled with pride. The next day, Rosa called her again. You saved my restaurant last night, she said softly. I don't know what to say, Alina smiled. Don't thank me yet. I have another idea. She proposed something bold, a taste of the Philippines weekend at Casa Manila, complete with food tasting, Filipino music, and a photo corner with traditional clothes and decorations. Rosa hesitated at first, worried about costs, but Alina assured her she'd handle the promotion herself. She spent the week designing posters, creating social media posts, and inviting friends and even local expats she met online. Her co-workers helped spread the word too, posting about the most heartwarming restaurant in Moscow. When the weekend finally came, the turnout was overwhelming. The line stretched outside the door. Filipinos living in Moscow showed up in traditional attire, some bringing homemade desserts to share. Russians from across the city came to try dishes they had never heard of before. The sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and Tagalog mixed with Russian filled the air. For the first time in months, Casa Manila was alive again. Rosa stood behind the counter, tears in her eyes. I can't believe this. It feels like I'm back home, Alina hugged her. You are home. You brought it here, and now everyone can feel it. That evening, as the event wound down, Rosa and Alina sat by the window watching the snowfall outside. The neon sign of Casa Manila glowed faintly against the white streets. Rosa turned to her. Alina, I think your grandmother would be proud of you. Alina smiled, her eyes shimmering. I think so too, you know. She always said kindness travels farther than people think. Maybe that's why I found the Philippines, and maybe that's why it found me. A few weeks later, Rosa made an announcement. Casa Manila was staying open. Not only that, but they were planning to expand the menu and even host regular Filipino nights. Word spread quickly. Articles appeared online about the little Filipino restaurant that brought warmth to Moscow. People came from other towns just to try sinigang and hear the story behind it. Alina's co-workers became regulars, and new customers arrived every week. Even local food bloggers started featuring the restaurant, praising its authenticity and atmosphere. One evening, as Alina was closing her laptop at work, Yelena came over with a grin. So, when are we going to the Philippines? Alina laughed. You mean it? Of course. You've been talking about it for weeks. We all want to see what inspired you so much. And just like that, a new idea bloomed. Bigger than the restaurant, bigger than the city. Let's go together, Alina said. Let's see where kindness comes from, Rosa cried when she heard the plan. You'll take the heart of Casa Manila with you, she said, hugging Alina tightly. That night, as Alina drove home through the softly falling snow, she thought of her grandmother again, of her stories, her laughter, her quiet strength. She realized now that kindness wasn't inherited by blood or culture. It was chosen, nurtured, shared, and soon she would bring it back to the very place where it was born. The wind was soft over the beaches of Cebu when the familiar faces stepped off the van, a mix of excitement, laughter, and disbelief filling the humid air. Alina led the group of 6 co-workers, each wide-eyed and grinning like children on their first day of summer break. Welcome to the Philippines, she said with a proud smile, spreading her arms like a tour guide. Sergei shaded his eyes, looking around. So this is where you said the soup made you cry? Alina laughed. Yes, and trust me, you'll understand soon. They arrived at a small seaside inn, the kind of place where the air smelled like salt and mangoes, where the sound of karaoke floated through the night. Rosa had helped arrange everything through her relatives back home, even making sure there was sinigang waiting for them when they arrived. That evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, they gathered around a long wooden table by the beach. The steam from the soup rose into the warm tropical air, and the scent of tamarind filled their senses. This, Alina said, handing Sergei a bowl, is what changed my life. He took a spoonful and froze. Then his eyes widened. Oh, my God. Yelena, who was beside him, tasted hers and let out a soft gasp. It's sour, but comforting. That's the magic, Alina said, smiling through tears. It's not just food, it's memory. It's heart. The owner of the inn, a kind elderly woman named Marites, watched them fondly. "You remind me of my children," she said. "Always laughing, always together. That's what food does here. It brings people close." The night turned into a small celebration. Someone brought out a guitar, and soon the group was singing, Russians and Filipinos together, blending accents and laughter under the open sky. When Alina sang a Tagalog song she had learned from Rosa, Tadhana by Up Dharma Down, the locals cheered and joined in. For the first time in her life, Alina felt a peace she couldn't explain. It was as if every story her grandmother once told had come to life. The kindness, the laughter, the love of strangers. The next morning, they took a boat to a nearby island where Rosa's cousin ran a small eatery. The kitchen was open air facing the sea. The group helped prepare the meal, learning to slice vegetables and cook rice the Filipino way, over fire and patience. "Everything here takes time," Marites said, stirring the pot. "That's why it tastes good." "You can't rush the heart," Sergei, sweating over the grill, chuckled. "In Russia, if we waited this long for food, we'd leave." "Then you'd miss the best part," Alina teased. By the time the food was ready, the whole island smelled like garlic, vinegar, and laughter. Locals joined the table, bringing desserts and stories. One fisherman shared how he once met a Russian tourist who taught him a few words of their language. Another woman proudly showed photos of her Russian husband, who had stayed after falling in love, not just with her, but with the country itself. It was in those stories that Alina's co-workers began to truly understand. "This place," Yelena whispered, looking around, "it changes people." "Yes," Alina said softly. "Because here, kindness isn't rare, it's normal." That evening, as the tide came in, Alina walked along the beach alone. The stars above Cebu were sharp and bright, like tiny memories scattered across the sky. She thought of her grandmother, the woman who once found refuge in Samar, who carried the Philippines in her heart long after she left. Now, Alina was carrying it too. When she closed her eyes, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice again, gentle, warm, filled with love. "Always be kind, anak. That's what the islands taught me." Her tears fell silently into the sand. She whispered, "I found it, Grandma. I finally found what you meant." A few days later, they flew back to Moscow. The cold air felt sharper this time, but it didn't sting like before. They carried with them something invisible, a lightness that no winter could dim. At Casa Manila, Rosa was waiting, wearing her apron and that familiar smile. "Welcome home," she cried as they entered. "We brought gifts," Sergei said, placing a bag of local coffee beans and dried mangoes on the counter. "And stories," Alina added, handing Rosa a small jar of sinigang mix from Cebu. Real ones. That night, they gathered again in the restaurant, sharing photos and videos from their trip. Rosa laughed and cried as she watched them singing karaoke with the locals. "You've become part of the family," she said, her voice breaking. "More than that," Alina said. "You started something, Rosa. This place, it's not just a restaurant anymore. It's a bridge," and it was true. In the months that followed, Casa Manila became more than anyone expected. The story of the Russian team's trip to the Philippines went viral after Alina posted a short documentary online titled "The Taste That Changed Hearts." Within days, thousands of people shared it. Comments poured in from both Filipinos and Russians. "I cried watching this. I miss home. Filipino hospitality is real. Thank you for showing it to the world. I'm Russian, and now I want to visit the Philippines." Soon, Casa Manila was packed every weekend. Russians lined up to try the dishes they had seen in the video. Filipinos living in Moscow came too, bringing their friends, families, even co-workers. One night, a Filipino diplomat came to dine, shaking Alina's hand. "You've done something special," he said. "You've reminded people that kindness doesn't have borders." By spring, Rosa had expanded the restaurant, adding a karaoke stage and a small section called Lola's Corner, a tribute to Alina's grandmother, with her photo framed beside a steaming bowl of sinigang. It became a quiet place of reflection, where customers left notes of gratitude, small handwritten papers that said things like, "You reminded me of home," and "Thank you for bringing warmth to Russia." Alina often sat there after work, watching the crowd, Filipinos teaching Russians to sing buwan, couples sharing Halo Halo, friends laughing loudly like it was summer in the tropics. One evening, Yelena approached her with a wide grin. "You know what's funny?" she said. Ever since our trip, people at work say I'm kinder, more patient. Like you, Alina laughed softly. Then I guess you've been infected. By what? By the heart of the Philippines, Elena chuckled. Then let's make it spread. And so they did. They organized small cultural nights, Filipino music, art, even dance lessons. Every event ended with laughter and full stomachs. Alina spoke about her grandmother's story, how one act of refuge decades ago planted a seed that was still growing. One winter afternoon, a group of Filipino students visited Casa Manila, performing a short song in honor of the community that welcomed them. Their final number was Anak, the same song Alina's grandmother once used to hum. As the melody filled the restaurant, Alina's tears returned, but this time, they weren't sad. They were grateful. She realized then that her grandmother's legacy wasn't just a story from the past. It was alive, breathing through every smile, every spoonful of sinigang, every Russian who learned to say salamat kindness, she thought. Truly travels farther than anyone could imagine. That night, as the snow fell gently outside, Rosa turned to Alina and said, "You know, this little restaurant saved me once, but now I think it's saving others." Alina smiled, watching her coworkers dancing awkwardly to Dahil Sayo. "Yes," she whispered. "And it all started with love and a bowl of soup." Outside, the neon lights of Casa Manila glowed softly against the snow. It wasn't just a Filipino restaurant anymore. It was a story of two worlds becoming one, of food, friendship, and a grandmother's memory that refused to fade. And somewhere, in the warmth of that little space, Alina finally felt what her grandmother must have felt all those years ago in Samar. Peace, love, and a heart forever touched by the islands,